Welcome, everyone. I'm Christina Nielsen, Horace Mann Elementary, Rock Island High School, Tulane University, University of Chicago. Thank you.
That's it?
Well, I'm sorry, yeah, that took 30 years, Kevin, so that's it. I'm also the Hannah and Russell Coley Director of the Art Museum here at the Huntington. We are thrilled to welcome you tonight and to celebrate the launch of a globe-trotting, heartwarmingly wonderful, wickedly funny, wild ride of a novel, Kevin Kwan's latest, Lies and Weddings. After this program, Kevin has kindly offered to sign books for those of you who are interested. First, a few acknowledgments. The Huntington exists on the ancestral lands of the Gabrielino, Tongva, and Kizh Nation peoples who call this region home. The Huntington respectfully acknowledges these indigenous peoples as the traditional caretakers of this landscape, as the direct descendants of the first people. The Huntington recognizes their continued presence and is grateful to have the opportunity to work and learn on this land. I'd like to begin by thanking a few people who made tonight's program possible, especially Sian Adams, Yinshi Lerman-Tan, and Mikey and Fred, who are keeping us on track with AV. I also want to thank our special guest tonight, Kevin Kwan, for his friendship and his generosity. Your brilliant spirit, curiosity, good humor, and sharp wit help us see ourselves and each other in ways that are expansive and compassionate. Kevin Kwan, Far Eastern Kindergarten, Anglo-Chinese School, Clear Lake High School, University of Houston, Parsons School of Design. Those of you who read the book know what I'm doing when I do that. Kevin Kwan was born in Singapore as the youngest of 3 boys into an established Chinese Singaporean family. His great-grandfather, O Sian Guan, was a founding member, director of Singapore's oldest bank, the Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation. And his paternal grandfather, Sir Arthur Kwan Pa Chien, MD, was an ophthalmologist who became Singapore's first Western-trained specialist and was knighted by Queen Elizabeth for his philanthropic efforts. Sir Arthur's wife, Kwan's paternal grandmother, Egan O, Lady Kwan, was a prominent debutante who became a socialite after her marriage. Kevin Kwan's maternal grandfather, the Reverend Paul Hang Sing Han, founded the Hinghua Methodist Church. While in Singapore, Kwan studied at the Anglo-Chinese School and lived with his paternal grandparents. His father and mother, an engineer and pianist respectively, moved the family to the United States when Kwan was 11. The family moved to Clear Lake, Texas, and Kwan graduated from Clear Lake High School when he was 16. He attended the University of Clear Lake, where he earned a BA in Media Studies, and then went to Manhattan to attend Parsons School of Design in order to pursue a BFA in photography. In New York, Kwan worked for Interview Magazine, Martha Stewart Living, and Tybor Commons design firm M&Co. In 2000, Kwan established his own creative studio, clients of which included TED.com, the Museum of Modern Art, and the New York Times. So it seems to me particularly appropriate that you're here with us tonight because, like you, the Huntington is a place where literature and visual art merge. My questions tonight will focus on 3 major themes: art, literature, and the natural world. And in fact, you and I met at a party celebrating an exhibition opening of Asian American Wonder Women, or up-and-coming Asian American artists. And as I was reading Lies and Weddings, I was struck by the fact that you have an Arabella, and we have an Arabella. Arabella Huntington was married to Henry Huntington and was one of the founders of our art museum, so clearly that's a coincidence. But your Arabella says, quote, "For me, it begins with art. The art sets the tone and the structure in every room." End quote. And I'm wondering, Kevin, the degree to which art sets the tone for you as you sit down to write a book.
Well, First of all, thank you for that amazing introduction, which also sounded a bit like a job interview. I was like,
If you want the job, I'll make one up for you.
but thank you. It's really, really a pleasure to be here tonight in one of my favorite places on the planet. And thank you all for being here tonight in Pasadena, or as we said in Texas, Get Down Dino. There's also Pasadena in Texas, where the great Gillies Bar
How can we compete with that?
used to be, with the mechanical bull and all that. So this is a very different Pasadena. This is old money town, and it's lovely to be here. What was the question again?
So
Art.
Art.
Yeah. So I think this being the fifth novel, it was time for me to really have fun and play and write about stuff that I actually care about. Not that I didn't care about other stuff in the Crazy Rich Asians series, but I've always had that struggle of loving being a writer, but also being a visual artist, of painting, of doing sculpture, of doing photography. And all my life, people were like, well, you gotta choose. What are you? Are you a writer? Are you an artist? Are you a designer? Are you a photographer? Are you a writer? And I've never been able to really choose, quite frankly, because I love both. And this book was my way to weave in some of the stuff I love about art and the art world and artists and wrap a whole story around it. That's the true confession.
Glad you didn't choose. And it's really clear, I think, in terms of reading your work, the way you paint a picture, the way we have portraits in our portrait gallery, the way you craft literary portraits, and as several of us in this room have been kind of reading and book clubbing your book this week, it was very clear to us your cinematic style, that art is really a character for you. And as an art museum director, I was absolutely struck by the way you so deftly wove the art and art world, its glories and its absolute foibles, into your work as though it's a character. And you name drop so many artists. So it was fantastic. Gainsborough, Canaletto, Agnes Martin, Brancusi, Louise Bourgeois, Wengechi Mutu, Judy Chicago, Donald Judd.
We can wrap that. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit, because I know that you know some of the artists that you've mentioned. Do you want to talk about
Sure. I mean,
blending them into the book?
I always write about what inspires me. And art inspires me, artists inspire me, places inspire me, right? So first of all, there's a chapter, for those of you who haven't read the book, there's a chapter that's actually set at the Huntington. And, being here, you're inviting me here so many times to different beautiful functions and letting me experience the art up close was truly inspirational. And there was one very pivotal scene that I was trying to figure out how the character, how Eden, who is the heroine of the book, is able to have this very special epiphany. And I remember coming here and seeing that room and seeing those two portraits, the Gainsborough and the Kenda Wiley, across from one another. That was the aha moment for me. Right, that tied it all back together. So I'm so thankful for that. That piece of inspiration from the place. Just like Venice. We also met in Venice. We had the craziest night together. I left Capri on the last boat. There was a horrible storm coming, and literally in the hotel, they woke me up and said, if you don't leave, you're stuck here till Thursday. This is the last boat out. So I rushed down to the harbor with 8,000 other people, threw myself into a boat, soaking wet, right? And then got to Venice, of all places, and was late for the dinner you were hosting, but got there in time because Rakib Shah, the amazing artist, I think basically was unhappy with the location.
That's right.
Right? The sunset wasn't perfect enough on the rooftop of the Hotel Daniele, so he moved the whole dinner right at the last minute,
Right at the last minute.
to Cipriani's on a whole other island. And we all went in boats. I mean, I don't make this stuff up, but once in a while, in a long while, I get to experience this, like you, right? And we got to meet the amazing Rakib Shah, who has a show here this November, I believe.
He has a show coming up this November, so I'm gonna freeze frame you for just a second to say, met you at a dinner party here in Los Angeles. On a whim, invited you to a dinner I was going to in Venice. You said yes. You risked your life getting yourself there. Because I was meeting an artist who we're bringing to the Huntington this November, so everybody please note in your calendar, mid-November, we will be opening an incredible show in the European Art Gallery called The Ballads of East and West. Rakib Shah, who's a Kashmiri-born, now London-based artist, a singular talent.
Incredible work.
Incredible work.
He's like a modern-day Michelangelo from India.
Singular talent.
Unbelievable work, and just what a personality.
A huge personality. So he.
And the thing I remember most, sorry to, was the end of the dinner when we all almost died again because we all piled into a taxi, a water taxi, going through Venice in the dark at, I don't know, 200 miles per hour through the lagoon, and I'm just holding on for dear life, going, we're gonna die. Like, what is happening here? Like, it's pitch black, and we're speeding down the lagoon.
It sounds like a movie, Kevin. Yeah. I'm nervous just listening to this, and
but we survived, and here we are.
We survived, and it was very much worth it. And I will note, on a serious note, Rakib had an exhibition at the Cab Pesaro, which is an international gallery of modern art. And so, at the dinner, we met Rakib, and we were also with the director of that museum, and then a dear friend of Rakib's who happens to run a conglomeration of museums in London called Tate. Some of you might have heard of it. So there was, those of you who work with me here at the Huntington, I was working, really, but being in your orbit, that little bit, and in the orbit of an artist like Rakib who has an unbelievable talent and a larger-than-life kind of personality and joie de vivre, was an incredible thing. And so we're delighted to be bringing him his work here. And he is part of an effort that we are making. The Huntington Art Museum, for those of you who know us, has inimitable historic collections of American, European, and Asian art, particularly East Asian, Japanese, and Chinese, in line with our gardens and our exhibition spaces in those gardens. But we're really taking a global look at our signature calling card, which is British art, and particularly British portraiture, grand manner British portraiture. So people like Rakib Shah, being part of global Britain, is a really important part of that. And now I want to kind of segue back into art. And I have two questions for you. One is really about your early introductions to art. I mean, you started as a practicing artist. Do you remember really early influences that you had or experiences you had with works of art?
I came from a very artistic family. My father was an incredible artist himself. I remember he used to actually do my art projects for me. He was an amazing dad, and he would, I remember one night I was having to make something out of balsa wood. This was probably like 3rd grade or something, and I couldn't figure out what to make, and it was getting late, and I was cranky, I probably cried, and he's like, go to sleep. And I woke up, and the next morning, literally, he'd built like the Starship Enterprise, but out of balsa wood, and I was like, there's no way the teacher's gonna think I did this. You know what I mean? It was incredible.
I don't know, Kevin,
yeah.
I think you showed talent.
But
very
he was an
early
incredible
on.
artist, who never really realized his talent because he became, he did the practical thing and went into engineering, right? And then his 3 sisters were incredible artists, like painting, I still have some of my aunt's paintings, and they are like a cross between Modigliani and Picasso.
Wow. What was her name?
Mary Kwan. Yeah. And then later in life, she studied classical Chinese painting. So she could do so much, and then her sisters as well. So I knew there was this artistic streak that was inherited from my dad's side, but they sadly, for them it was just a pastime, right? No one did this as a career because it was sort of unheard of to do this professionally in Singapore in the 60s and 70s. So they all went on to do other things, like become doctors.
Very
but
logical,
there
yes.
was a creative talent there,
Yeah.
which is why for me it's so important to try to inspire the next generation of young people, especially Asians in America, Asians elsewhere, that you can have a creative life and have a career out of it if that's what you really want to do.
Did you hear that? Yeah, I think, we at the Huntington talk a lot about the importance of the humanities. And at this time when, so many young people are going into schools and being told, well, you need to do hard sciences, right? STEM. We're always saying STEAM with an A because the arts are a really important part of communicating across disciplines, which is something that turns up, I think, in your book. You've got tech people, you've got doctors, you've got an artist. One of the main protagonists for Lies and Weddings is Rufus, and I don't want to give away any of his sort of narrative arc, but
I think it's safe to say he's an artist whose parents, his mom doesn't really accept him as an artist, right? She thinks he's just wasting his time. I don't know anything about that. But, you sense that's one of his struggles in life, right? Trying to come into his own as an artist. And I actually had a whole chapter in the book of him at an art opening in New York. I don't think I told you this, where he's trying to get to the gallery owner and make a connection and say, and it's like failing desperately, because of the crowd and just the way. So it's like my satire of a New York art opening and what it takes for artists to try to get notice. And my editor was like, too boring, too insider, take it out. So I did,
all right. Yeah,
but the intention was there.
Yeah. Got it. And I thought fabulous that Rufus, over the course of sort of figuring out who he is and where he wants to go, that he decides he will support artists in residence.
That's one of his aha moments, right? Because he himself goes to a very special place in the book, and it blows his mind to be around great art. It moves him and inspires him in the way that I think it can everyone.
Yeah.
Whether we understand it or not.
Absolutely.
It has a visceral impact.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of museums and their mission in your life, in the book? I mean, there's a moment in which Arabella in your book has a sort of existential crisis and ends up in one of my favorite places, the Sir John Soanes Museum in London, and is looking at Hogarth images of Rake's Progress. And I'm thinking, this is amazing. This is like art history. Is coming alive in this novel.
I forgot about that chapter.
I didn't. Talk to us about museums and what they mean to you.
I mean, museums have always been like my place of solace. I remember moving to Houston and feeling, for the first few years, like I was in a really strange cultural wasteland, right? Because in Singapore, actually, I was immersed in art and culture, and the Singapore Museum was great, and there were always field trips, and then suddenly I'm in Houston, Texas, right? Where it's all about football and basketball.
And cheerleaders.
God bless them.
Yep.
But, I craved more. So for me, discovering the Manil collection, which is this amazing private museum in Houston that most Houstonians don't even know exists, was just amazing. Just to be there. The Rothko Chapel there is one of my favorite places on the planet because I was able to go there and contemplate and be inspired, and it helped to propel me to want to get out of Houston and move to New York and go to art school. Now, I love Houston, don't get me wrong.
No.
It's my hometown. I appreciate what it did for me.
Yes.
But but interacting with the museums in Houston allowed me to make that next step, because I was like, but I want MoMA in my life.
Right.
I want the Met in my life every day.
Yeah.
Right. And so I went to art school in New York and then regretted doing that because I had to go to the Met every day till I was sick of it to do, drawings and studies and, so like I give a really good 45-minute tour of the Met.
Incredible.
Because I just know all the secret passages of like how to get around and the greatest hits.
We should go there together sometime.
Yeah, I'm sure you can give me a better tour.
I can show you secret doors.
Yeah.
So let's stick with Texas for a minute, though. I was delighted the Manil and the Rothko Chapel makes an appearance in your book. You also have a scene, two of your characters are driving down a West Texas highway. There's nothing but bramble bushes, and then all of a sudden they come to Marfa. So you have found the sort of incredible places in Texas, and your characters are discovering them as well. But I want to ask a little bit more.
There's also a hot love scene in Marfa.
There is, and so you don't need to read Dragon Sex this summer. Just read Lies and Weddings. There.
Thank you.
I don't know
really
what Dragon
summer.
Sex
I'm
is, but
apparently
it's sucking all the air out of the room. But I want to come back to your. So for some people, Marfa feels like being transported. There's a Prada store there, which is a work of art. There's the Chinati. There's the Donald Judds. Did you feel like you had been parachuted in from because there's also NASA in Houston. How was it coming? I mean, you've talked on the surface about coming from Singapore and landing in Texas, and even what I've witnessed just from the periphery, the importance that your book has, your work, and your books being translated into movies. We talked about art, and then there's also visibility. There's seeing and being seen. And I think your works and what we're trying to do by bringing people like Rakib Shah here is to show Asians and the people who live between two very different worlds. Can you talk a little bit more about the weight that your work has and the meaning that you have seen for people who are seeing themselves? And in the New York Times just this week, there was an article about how your work has improved the dating prospects for Asian men in this country. So you're welcome, and thank you, Kevin. But can you talk about that, about visibility?
Whoa. It's really hard for me to do that, really. Seriously, it's very surreal because I didn't set out to help Asian men improve their dating lives, but I'm so glad it has, right? Like I was, for my own really selfish reasons, just trying to write a book, right? And just, it was a very I was not gonna publish it even, because I felt like, who's gonna wanna read this book? It's never going to even get in the door. So I'm gonna do it myself, right? And I think that self-reliance came from growing up in Houston, growing up in a place where I was one of 5 other Asian kids in my entire high school.
Wow.
Right? You're beyond invisible. And so I had to stick out by being the class clown and the biggest flirt and kind of like a mean kid. You know what I mean? Maybe not. But it's interesting in retrospect, looking back, right? And I was not conscious of it. I was 15 years old. I was 14 years old, and you're just trying to make it work and not get shoved into a locker every day, right?
Yeah.
So you do that by being the smart ass, right? And like I was tiny, so I had to learn to use my street smarts, which was words.
Exactly. So
You know?
street smarts and book smarts. Let me move into my second line of questioning, which is really about literature, writing, and language. So you're a young kid. You're in Texas. You say the class clown. It's amazing how you have then come to write these books in which you are observing a wide range of worlds and a range of people. And I want to talk about footnotes for a second, because this book has such a flow and such a really fast pace, and then every now and then there are these little asterisks, and you go down to the bottom of the page and you read it's like a footnote. And so, are you a researcher? Are you an anthropologist?
Just pretending to be one, yeah. I don't really do that much research, quite honestly. You know, I think the footnotes are so random because there's all this really random bits of junk in my head. So like if I'm writing a passage and suddenly we can talk about the Pope's pillows, right? And who does his socks, I have that information. I don't know why, but that's gonna work it in. So like I cheat. I don't really, you know, it's not stuff that I need to research. It's just the junk I need to get out of my brain.
Gotcha. Well, it was fun. It's part of the fun ride, going up and down between the story and then the junk that you're putting into the bottom of the page. Let's talk a little bit about language. Occasionally, some of your characters switch into Cantonese. And
in this book, they do because it's a Hong Kong Cantonese family that Lady Arabella, is part of. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. And she'll do that only
She'll
with
code
certain
switch.
people. She code switches. Are you code switching in the books?
Interesting. I've never thought of it that way, but yeah, I think so. And I think all the characters are, you know, many of the characters, especially the ones that straddle different cultures,
Absolutely.
are also code switching in different ways, you know, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to write this new series. You know, Lies and Weddings is the second book in what I call the Cities trilogy, which began with Sex and Vanity.
Right.
The first book in that series, where I'm looking at Asians outside of Asia, right?
Yeah.
What happens when Asians immigrate or move or intermarry or are born into, you know, biracial families? Like I really wanted to look at that collision and that intersection.
Yes.
And you see so much of this constant code switching that does happen in these families specifically.
I loved the metaphor, which I hadn't heard of. I'm the mother of 2 children who have a South Asian father, and I have a new word for them. They're Hapa rice. So thank you. Or there's some kind of doll or something.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure about that. But okay. So I do want to save some time for questions from the audience, because I'm sure the audience has questions. But I want to talk really briefly about the natural world and landscapes, because the third part of the Huntington art, the library, and then the gardens, which I hope you have all seen either today or on previous visits or future visits. I want to talk about landscapes a little bit, and the natural world, and how sometimes the natural world comes in and takes over. Lava. Let's talk about lava.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Lava is a character that surprises a few people and kind of upends the best laid plans and moves people along. But I'm wondering, you are sitting here in the San Gabriel Valley, nested in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, and home to an incredibly diverse demographic and population. And I was reading a report that there are more Asian Americans in the SGV, San Gabriel Valley, than in LA, San Francisco, Chicago, and 42 states.
Amazing.
So,
And the best Asian food in North America.
and
I
the
think.
best Asian
Yeah.
food in North America, absolutely. But I'm wondering, you have these characters who go between different places, like green England. You talk about sunsets in Hawaii and surfing. How important is it to you to sort of describe natural landscapes?
It's a recurring theme that is central to all my books. And like I hate to give like the secret sauce away, right? Too much. But like if you really go back to even Crazy Rich Asians, nature has a way of always working its way in and somehow helping my characters heal, right? In the case of Crazy Rich Asians, the book is really different from the movie, but there's this amazing bird that is pecking on the window all day long at the house where, I want to say Henry, it's not Henry. What was his name? Nick. Thank you. Nick's hiding out in a house, and this bird is bothering him every day, but the bird becomes this amazing lesson, right?
Yeah.
And then, no spoiler alert, but at the end of the series, we see how being in this amazing natural landscape in the Philippine Islands is transformative for Astrid, right? So again and again, you see nature come in and nature healing. And nature has done that for me. People see me as being a city person and meeting you in Venice and stuff like that and living in LA, but nature and being in nature is so important to me. Going out on hikes, going to Italy and being by the sea.
Yeah.
That's where I recharge, that's where I get inspired. And I was actually having a really hard time writing this book until I went to Hawaii. My dear friends who are here tonight somewhere invited me out. Hey, one New Year's, right? And I went there to the Big Island, and just being on an island that is literally an active volcano, where volcanic lava can spew out of anyone's garden, anyone's backyard, any minute, is incredible. And somehow, I think just being in this really fertile land spurred my creativity, and I started writing a chapter a day. So my 5-day trip turned into 6 weeks, and I wrote the whole first section of the book there. So nature has truly, truly been a blessing and magic in my life. And thank you, Laurel and Josh.
Thank you, Laurel and Josh. Absolutely. And it's so beautiful to hear, and I think it's something that we all who work here or get to visit here or research here feel so keenly. The solace and the inspiration. I wanted to just note you have this. It's very clear that you love particular places. You have an incredible cocktail in the M&A cocktail that's being served at a wedding. With Norwegian aquavit, Chinese plum wine, Devonshire elderflower, syrup, and sparkling water from a secret spring in Topanga Canyon. And that's being served in Hawaii. I think it's in Hawaii.
I literally
so
have a friend that goes to some bootleg water salesperson that sells water from a secret spring in Topanga.
And this is like
I'm hoping to find it myself too.
A Norwegian prince is marrying landed gentry from England and Hawaii, and Topanga Canyon somehow comes into the picture. So I love that. And I'll just note another favorite moment for me that shows clearly how much landscape means to you is you're describing a British character who's come to Los Angeles for the first time, and as she's looking around and noticing the colors, you say there's something about the almost sort of the brilliance of the colors and the sky and the blue is almost decadent. That there's like a decadence to the colors here in LA. So I know you're relatively new here, but you see it very, very clearly. Thank you for those evocative evocations of the place where we all are lucky enough to be at this moment in time. On that note, I'd love to open up to Q&A.
Only if people have questions. Otherwise, we can all go Drink more, right? Yeah.
I see a hand. I see some hands, and we've got some
There's
microphones.
someone roving with a microphone, I think. Oh, there's some back
or
there.
we've got some questions in the front row. So hang on a second.
Hi, Kevin. I'm just wondering what's holding up the rest of the movies. Has anyone else wondered the same thing?
I am the wrong person to ask because I'm the #1 advocate for wanting these movies to happen, right? And I spend most of my life happening. But you know, there is a film executive here that can answer all your questions. But I'm not going to out her because I think she'll be the most inundated person in the room. But you know, the pandemic, right, was a big part of it. Warner Brothers being bought and sold twice right after Crazy Rich Asians came out also was part of it. And then the good thing is that all these stars blew up and got so busy. You know, Henry made so many movies. Michelle won an Oscar, Awkwafina. I mean, they all became the most hottest in-demand actors around. So it was also hard to wrangle them back. But things are progressing super well. And we're really, really hoping that you'll get some really amazing news to come very soon, both about the CRA movies, but also Sex and Vanity, which is being made by Sony, and the Crazy Rich Asians musical that is happening. I mean, so thank you. Yeah, we're trying. Yeah, and Warner Brothers is in Burbank. You can write them letters or show up there and say why, you know. But I think we need that. We need people to say, they need to know the demand, right? Because sounds good, but thank you.
Hi. First, I want to start off by saying how grateful I am to be sitting in a room where we can all unanimously agree how much representation matters. My question for you is, after the success of Crazy Rich Asians, can you walk us through a moment where the meaning, like the depth of the meaning changed for you of what it means to have representation matter? Thank you.
Wow. It has been so unbelievable, really, what has happened since that movie. And for me, most of all, you know, it's just a really weird place to be because I never, you know, could have imagined. First of all, like I never thought my book would be published, never thought there'd be a movie, never thought there'd be a musical. But to actually meet people who share their stories with me, right? And to, you know, I met this, recently I was in Oklahoma City doing an event for the Oklahoma Public Libraries there, and this guy came up and told me, literally, he's like, your movie changed my life because now my neighbors are talking to me for the first time ever. My kids are popular in high school, you know, and my business, he runs, you know, like a shop. He's like, is like, business is through the roof. And it's truly because of your movie and your books. And so hearing that is amazing and unbelievable. But I always say it's because of all your support, because you guys supported the movie and you guys supported the books and you guys came out here tonight. Thank you. So it begins with the community supporting works that are being made by other Asian artists. So thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. This event has just made my entire week. Thank you so much, as I'm sure everybody else in this crowd. In your books, all 5 books, really one of my favorite parts about it is kind of the different restaurants that you talk about, whether it's lobster noodles in London or fish balls in Hong Kong. Have you found any favorites yet in LA, or can you talk a little bit about your favorites?
So there's actually a whole list of LA restaurants and places in the new book, In Lies and Weddings. It's not my list, it's the list made by one of my characters.
Freddie,
who is a Beverly Hills Persian So it's very specific to his world, right? But still, I snuck in a few of my favorites in there. You'll see, And for myself, I'm an equal opportunity eater. Like it's really hard for me to find food that I don't actually like. But I would love always more suggestions, especially in the San Gabriel Valley. Like I have not explored as much in this area. Yeah. So find me on Instagram, shoot me recommendations. I will go anywhere for good food. So thank you.
I will put in a shameless plug. We have a restaurant here called the Jade Court Cafe. Have any of you been to Jade Court Cafe? It is in our Chinese garden, and
the food is amazing. I was surprised by how good it was.
Thank you. I will say, speaking to San Gabriel Valley, it had to be. Museum food often has a deservedly bad reputation, but we knew, food being such an important part of Chinese and Asian culture, and that you can get unbelievable Asian food just a few blocks away from here, that it had to be good.
Totally legit. And I wasn't paid to say this.
Nope.
Any other questions? So.
San, oh yeah, and then.
Hi. Thank you again so much for coming and speaking with us. I just kind of wanted to ask you, you said that when you were in school and like how you thought that Crazy Rich Asians, you didn't think that this book was going to be made. You didn't know if the story was necessarily needed, and it's created a massive phenomenon that makes so many Asians, myself included, feel seen, and so many powerful Asian women like step into their confidence and like own exactly who they are. And I think that there's been an incredible boom of that since then, even during the pandemic and things like that. But how do you continue to write stories or get past like any sort of blockage where you're like, this story might already be told, or like maybe it's just like not necessarily needed anymore because there's so much representation now, which is incredible, but can also be very daunting and scary for writers or creators and artists who are still trying to step into that space. So what advice would you give to someone like that?
I don't think there's so much out there. I think there's so little still. I mean, all of Asian Hollywood fits in one room, literally, right? And if you look at Asian authors, Asian American authors, they still are very few and far between. So I feel that there are so many stories I want to tell, both in novels, both in TV, both in film, because we're really at base camp, right? And if you compare the representation of what we see in our media compared to Latino culture, compared to African American culture, and then of course white culture, we're minuscule. So I always say, we need more stories. We need more people, more artists.
Right.
More Asian American artists. Like Dominic Fung, who I believe.
So I was going to come back to where we met,
Yeah.
which was at an opening for a group of Asian American female artists. And I'm wondering, you mentioned Dominic Fung. We have in our American galleries a sort of Trans-Pacific gallery.
I believe she's the first Asian American female artist in your collection.
Yes. Yes.
That's huge, and she's 34. I don't want to out her
That's
age,
right.
but she's very young. But so it's happening, but I just think we need so much more, right? And so I'm trying, but you all need to help. Thank you.
I think we had another question in the near the back of the first section in the green shirt. Sian, keep going.
Yeah. There's also a mic stand, right? If someone wants to go up to the mic stand and ask a question, yeah.
Do you want the easy question or the hard question first? You strike me as a very humble person based on your background. So how do you keep yourself grounded and not let the stars get in your eyes?
I think, number one, coming from the family I come from helps, right? Where I'm not considered significant at all. There's much more accomplished people in my family than me, so it keeps you real, number one. But I think also it's just, I don't know, it's, most of my life is spent in a room writing, right? That's 90% of my time. And once in a while I come out and I meet amazing people and get to do this, but for the most part, I have a very, very, very boring, normal life. So that also helps to keep it real, I think.
Thank you. I think it's helpful for others when they start to reach for the stars, is what you've accomplished. So congratulations to you. The second
Thank you.
question is that I'm curious if you were able to write what you write if you were in Singapore.
Would I be able to write what I write in Singapore?
Because I feel that when you lived in Singapore, but now you're not in Singapore now, so do you see where I'm going with that?
I actually think truly the strange gift of my life was being taken away from Singapore at age 11. You know, when my dad said, "Hey, we're moving," right? And our family immigrated. And I was old enough at 11 to remember so much, you know, I was already conscious of what was happening, right? And so all those memories crystallized like amber. But then being away from it and not having gone back also gave me a perspective in a way. Like, if I had stayed, I'm not sure the books would have ever happened. I think I would be in banking. Seriously, I think I would have gone to work for, you know, the family bank, and I would be in private wealth management right now. Because that's, you know, one of the chosen paths in Singapore, right? Like, becoming a writer is not very viable there, from what I understand. So, thank you.
Oh, sure, at the mic.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, I thought I'd try this out. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Karen, and I am a professor, an English professor at Cal Poly in Pomona, just a few miles away. And I'm going to include your book in my literacy, language, and cultural practices course. Yay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're a 50% minoritized campus, and we're working really hard as English professors to decolonize our syllabi and to include authors that are not just from the traditional canon. This book opens up a lot of opportunities for us to talk about translanguaging in class, as we've already heard this evening. But what I'm asking from you as a gift is, could you give me a message I could take back to my students for when they start reading the book?
Can you repeat the last part of the question? Sorry, it was a bit, it was just a bit muffled.
That's okay. I get nervous even though I'm a teacher. Could you give me a message I could take to my students so that when they start the book, I can say, you have a message from Kevin Kwan that he wants you to think about as you start reading this book?
Specific to lies and weddings.
Specific to lies and weddings, and this is for a literacy, language, and cultural practices class.
Wow, that's really a tall order. This is why I don't teach.
You can think about it, and I can get back to you at the end. But
Yeah. I mean, you know, ultimately, I want people to enjoy the books and to laugh and escape. Sorry if that sounds too simplistic, right? Like,
no.
I
think they'll just be thrilled to have a message from you.
Yeah.
So I can definitely tell them that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have time for one more, or
I think we have time for one more.
Up front.
Kevin Kwan, Longdon Elementary, Oak Avenue, Temple City High School, UC Riverside. My name is also Kevin Kwan. Now, I didn't live a crazy rich Asian life, but through you and having the same name, I have to say thank you, because a lot of people thought I was you, and I got many experiences from that, so thank you so much.
I'm just glad you don't want to smack me in the face. That's all, because I hope I haven't ruined your life.
No, you haven't.
There's someone thanked in my book who's also named Kevin Kwan, a Dr. Kevin Kwan. And a lot of questions, I've been on tour for the last 3 weeks, and people keep asking, is that you? It's like, no, there literally is another Kevin Kwan who's a doctor who was my medical consultant on all the sort of the the medical stuff that happens in the book. So we're all out there. Thanks for joining the Kevin Kwan Club.
Thank you.
All right, I think on that note, Kevin has been warming up his signing fingers and is willing to be with us for some time and sign books. We'll get him out there as you're heading out of the auditorium. I want to thank you all again for being here tonight.
Thank
and
you so much.
Kevin
really.
Kwan.
Thank you. Thank you.